Alright, as part of our month-long whirlwind tour of extreme transgressive cinema, I decided to rewatch a Serbian film. First time I've seen it in about 2 years, and I still think it's one of the absolute finest social satires to come out, really, of the last 25 years, as far as I'm concerned. It's a very controversial film, and if you've been on the internet for any amount of time, you've probably heard a lot about it. In fact, it's become quite popular, and a lot of people kind of look at it as being the single most shocking and depraved and disturbing and disgusting film ever made. And while there are some pretty abrasive scenes in the film, I think overall its reputation is perhaps a little bit overstated. Yeah, there's some pretty out there scenes, but overall, I think this is actually a genuinely enjoyable and honestly a great movie. I really liked it. Not in the ironic, sarcastic sense, and not in the fact that it's like it because it was extreme and very shocking, but actually because that was a fantastic film. Right off the bat, the production values on the film are just absolutely astounding. This is a movie where clearly the filmmakers really didn't have a lot of capital to work with, but even so, I mean, this movie just looks absolutely amazing. It's like a multi-million-dollar feature when it only costs like what, 30 Serbian dollars maybe. As far as the plotline goes, I'm pretty sure you've seen it by now, or you've heard about it. It's about a guy who was an old school film star of the adult variety, and he's retired, and he's kind of poor, and he's down on his luck, and he ends up getting a call from an old friend who says, hey, this guy wants to make a movie, if you do it, you'll be set for life. So begrudgingly, he goes along with it, and from there, things just take a nosedive into absolute insanity. And I think this film is just so expertly paced. It kind of reminds me of movies like The Exorcist or The Evil Dead, where they actually do kind of take their time, and it's such a slow fall into just madness. As far as some of the key scenes in the film, I really don't want to talk to them in much detail, simply because if you haven't seen the film, I don't want to ruin anything for you. But, if you're going to ask me whether or not I think the film is just exploitative violence and shock cinema for the sake of being violent and shocking, I disagree, because in case you haven't noticed, the film was made in Serbia. And if you know anything about modern, Eastern European history, you would know that it was only about 20 years ago that there were concentration camps in the Balkans. Like 1992, there were ethnic cleansing going on. So clearly there is a lot of things being said about contemporary Eastern European culture within this film. The director of the picture said it's actually about Serbian motion picture industry and how there's a lot of foreign funds. And there's a really great scene nobody ever talks about where right before the filming begins, within the diegetic plot of the film, there is a Sony camera propped up in front of a map of the world, and wouldn't you know it, the map is right there, positioned over the US of A. So definitely there is a very profound political message. I think this one definitely passes the slaps test. It's very artistically done, it's very experimental, and I think it actually does have a pretty fair amount of social value to it. If you have never seen this movie before and you're not really a fan of transgressive cinema, it will shock you, no doubt. There are definitely some very hardcore images going in the film. And it's a lot of stuff that you would not see in mainstream motion pictures. Do I really think it's that disturbing? I really don't. I would say this film is kind of like in line with a film like Old Boy, where yes, it is shocking and disturbing to some regard, but it's because it's just so expertly done. Like there's actually some human pathos in there. So it's not just exploitative sleaze for the sake of being exploitative sleaze. Really not much else to say about the film. It's just a really outstanding motion picture. I think right now it is extremely controversial and everyone's divided. Some people think it's just absolute garbage with no redeeming social value. But I think, as the years drag on, we're probably going to look back on this one as being one of the cornerstones of modern transgressive cinema. I think this is definitely probably our generation's equivalent of a Clockwork Orange. Something that's just really ahead of its time that people just don't know how to interpret or take. If you got a strong stomach and if you're used to the films alike and you can tolerate films that kind of go beyond the standard idea of decency, using contemporary social values, then you might really enjoy this film. But if you can't, then I would advise to stay away. But if you just have a taste for out there cinema and you can enjoy art in its most extreme incarnations, then I say a Serbian film is definitely worth catching. And if you haven't seen it, really, what are you waiting for? It's an absolute masterpiece. Thumbs way up.